Alright, so what we're going to do here, guys, is just a multi-part series on the basics of car control. So look for more of these videos in the future, but for the first one here, all we're going to talk about is acceleration. Because, knowing how and when and where and why to accelerate can be pretty tricky. So I'm Wyatt Knox. I've been here at Team O'Neill for a long time. I'm a two-wheel drive national champion.
I'm Travis. I'm the director of training for Team O'Neill. I've been an instructor here for about 10 years. Also a super production national champion.
So basically, I guess, whenever you try to accelerate in a car, you need to think about that as an input that you're giving the car, and then you kind of have a conversation from there on whether or not the car takes that input and does what you want, or if it decides not to. So when we step on the throttle, we expect the car to accelerate appropriately. A little bit of gas, we accelerate a little. A lot of gas, we accelerate a lot. As normal daily driving, that's what we see. But that's not always what we see, in rally cars, on loose surfaces, and very high horsepower vehicles. In a lot of different situations, a lot of weird things can happen.
And a lot of this is going to depend on your drive line of your vehicle, right? So out there in the world, we've got vehicles that are front-wheel drive cars or rear-wheel drive cars or even all-wheel drive cars. And they all respond differently to acceleration. And if we do get any sort of wheel spin, they're going to spin in different wheels, right? A front-wheel drive car would spin the front wheels, a rear-wheel drive car would spin the rear wheels. And so you guys are going to kind of have to figure out what kind of car you have. Maybe you're a car guy, you already know. But the other way of kind of figuring things out is going out on a slippery surface. Maybe you find a gravel road and you come to a complete stop. You clutch out in first gear quickly with a lot of gas on, or maybe just give it a lot of gas in an automatic, and you see which wheels spin. And you might also find something else out about your vehicle at this point in time, whether or not the car has traction control. Right? Because a lot of modern cars sold these days, 2011 and newer, all cars are going to have it, right? Traction control. And what traction control does is limit the amount of wheel spin your car is allowed to have, per se.
Yeah, so with traction control, if you're on a snowy road and you jump all over the throttle and you feel it just bogs the engine down and it feels like the thing's dying or something like that, that's kind of a basic form of traction control that cars have had for many, many years, kind of as standard equipment. You might also find if you jump all over the gas, you feel like the ABS is coming on. You can feel brr, 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 and it's applying brakes to individual wheels. More modern cars are going to do that to you. And you might find a combination of both. You're trying to go up a snowy hill and it's cutting engine throttle and applying individual brakes, and all of a sudden you're stopped, trying to go up a hill. So you might say, well, why do we have traction control? Well, it's because a lot of people don't pay attention. And a lot of people don't have a lot of experience. So if you're driving down the highway and you're just, cruising along with the stereo on, screaming at the kids and whatever, if you hit a patch of black ice, it's not going to let the tires just spin free and get you into a weird situation where you crash your car. So that's why traction control is there. But they know that it's not always the best, and that's why almost all cars with traction control have a traction control off button. It may say track, it may say TCS, it may have some other brand proprietary system there. But basically what they're doing and what they're saying is, why would spinning the tires help you? Well, you got to think of a road as either a three-dimensional surface or a two-dimensional surface. So say you have a bit of snow on top of a paved road. Or maybe this is frozen gravel or something else that you might be on. With your traction control, you're going to be driving along on this snow, and when it senses the tire's going to spin, it'll cut your throttle and you'll be driving around on this snow, and you're not going to have a lot of grip. And maybe you wouldn't make it up a hill or something like that, where if you shut the traction control off and you let the tire spin, what you'll see is that all of a sudden it's going to throw some of this stuff out of the way, and the benefit of that is that you get down to this harder packed surface where you've got more grip.
And so that's applicable for a loose surface, right? A loose surface would be something like snow or like loose gravel or maybe a little bit of a slimy mud on top of a hard packed surface. Something that the tire could physically move out of the way. You could get down to the harder packed surface and actually get good acceleration. If you're already starting on a hard packed surface like pavement or like a sheet of ice, like perfectly polished ice, A surface where the tire can't move any material out of the way, wheel spin might not be your best bet at that point in time, right? Because maybe on pavement you've already got a lot of mechanical grip there. Any spinning of the wheel is actually loss of grip and going to be a loss in acceleration. Same thing on ice, you don't have a lot of grip, but anytime you spin the wheels on ice, you're really never going to go anywhere. So you're going to have to slowly accelerate on a surface like that.
Yeah, so I mean, it comes down to, the traction control on, the traction control off. On a loose surface, if it's snow, if it's mud, if it's sand, if it's whatever, we'll shut the traction control off so that we get this added advantage of being able to chew through that top surface down to a harder, better underlying surface. Where if you're on pavement, spinning tires on pavement doesn't help you accelerate at all. It just smokes the tires and you might get chicks or whatever, but it's not gonna help you, accelerate out of a corner or accelerate off the line if you're drag racing or get away from a stoplight or whatever you're trying to do. Spinning the tires isn't that good. Leave your traction control on even, and you might be able to do just fine with that. Traction control might be your best bet on pavement in modern cars.
So in the rally cars, we typically disable all these sort of safety systems like traction control, ABS, stability control, that sort of thing, so that the driver can control the amount of wheel spin necessary for the surface that they're dealing with, or maybe the drive line that they're dealing with. And so say maybe the driver is on pavement and you want to have some sort of threshold acceleration where you're accelerating as quickly as you can but not causing any wheel spin. You could kind of dictate that sort of thing as far as how much throttle you add in. Or maybe you are on that loose surface and you need to give it a little more gas to cause some wheel spin so you get a little bit better acceleration. It's up to the driver, because in rally we drive on so many different surfaces. We are our own traction control.
And there's really a lot of factors at play when you're looking at how well your car is going to accelerate out of corners and off the line and up hills and stuff. A few of the big factors, your tires. Your tires' actual contact patch, with the ground. What does the tread of your tire look like? What is it designed for? Are you worried about, the stickiness of the rubber sticking to that pavement? Do you have a gravel tire or, you've seen sand paddle tires and dirt bike tires and mountain bike tires and everything else, that are designed for loose surfaces that are going to chew away at some pebbles and some mud and find better grip. You see a lot of different tires and your pressures can make a huge difference. When you accelerate, if you've got 100 PSI in your tires or something ridiculous, that tire's not going to squish and deform, and that contact patch isn't going to grow maybe the way that you want it to when you accelerate. So your tire compounds make a huge difference. The tread pattern makes a huge difference. The pressures in your tires can make a huge difference as far as how well you accelerate. The same car with 25 PSI versus 30 versus 35, you'll probably see a massive difference on all kinds of surfaces on how well you're going to accelerate.
Yeah, I think it brings up a good point the way Wyatt talked about how, when you accelerate, you would increase the size of the contact patch, but that really depends on the weight transfer of the vehicle. That's another thing that can kind of come into play here when we're talking about how well you can accelerate, right? So the idea here is that you've got a vehicle, and when you get on the gas, you have to assume that the weight's going to transfer to the rear two tires, right? And also, in the same time, transfer weight off of the front two tires, So as far as contact patches go on this vehicle, when you accelerate, the front contact patch is going to become smaller, right? Because, if this is the ground, you're kind of lifting the weight up off to that tire, but then you've got all the weight in the back here, so the contact patch in the tire kind of starts to flatten out. And so that kind of brings up back to the different drive lines of vehicles too, right? Because you could have a front wheel drive car on acceleration, you're taking weight off the drive tires, versus a rear wheel drive car, like a drag racing car. That's why most of those things are rear wheel drive, right? Because you get on the gas and they lift the front tires off the ground and the rear tires squat down. That makes perfect sense for acceleration in a drag race.
Yeah, and the weight transfer, something that's also very critical about that is, when you're going up hills and down hills. Say this isn't beautiful flat level ground. Say you're trying to make it up a hill, whether you're racing at a hill climb or just trying to drive up a snowy hill or whatever it might be. That weight transfer is huge. If you've got a front wheel drive car and you're accelerating and you're trying to go up a steep hill, those front tires are chewing away at the air. They're not really doing a whole lot for you. So, you know, a four-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive vehicle might be better. That's why you see, you know, hill climbs, Pikes Peak, everything, you know, there's a huge advantage to rear-wheel drive cars, or certainly four-wheel drive would be the best. But yeah, you're looking at getting, you know, all of your grip is on the back tires when you're accelerating. That's why you might feel the steering get light under hard acceleration.
The other thing that we thought of that might come up when you're accelerating, especially on loose surfaces, would be the different kind of differentials your vehicle might have, right? So typically a lot of cars that are just sold off the dealer lot, unmodified vehicles, are going to have an open differential, and when it comes to accelerating, as soon as one of those wheels starts to slip, it's gonna, you know, basically stop or start sending more power to that wheel, right? So we'd say an open differential is a lazy differential in the fact that it sends power to the path of least resistance. So if you find that, you know, this tire here ends up on a slippery surface, you know, that tire is actually gonna get all the power. And you might not be able to accelerate all that well, versus a car that has some sort of limited slip differential that's going to bias the torque equally, you know, to both sides. You might be able to accelerate because at that point in time you actually have two-wheel drive versus just one wheel spinning.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of differentials out there. What you'll see is most production cars, an open differential, which will just switch into one-wheel drive if one tire's on ice or in the mud or in a pothole or something. A limited slip differential is going to give you much better grip. They're probably both going to turn and you'll be able to drive. You know, you do see, especially with center differentials, there's viscous diffs and torsion diffs and other exotic diffs. And you know, we even see locking differentials. In the off-road world, and even in rally cars, we'll have lockable, you know, plate type differentials so that they truly get 50-50 torque split between each other and when you're in a straight line. And that's how it works. The when you're in a straight line thing is actually pretty important, not just because of these differentials, but they're really the rolling resistance of those front tires. You know, if you're stuck in the snow and you can't make it out of your driveway and you realize, oh, I've got the wheels turned all the way and the thing won't budge, straightening the wheel, all of a sudden you can drive right out of stuff. And it's the same, you know, in a rally car on the start line. It's the same when you come out of a corner and you're trying to go for it down a straightaway. You know, if you've got the wheels turned and you're trying to accelerate, your acceleration's being limited because it's pushing the friction on those front tires, where if you can get the wheel dead straight and go, you're gonna have much better luck.
Yeah, so, you know, in the coming videos, we're going to have to talk about turning. And we're going to have to talk about also maybe possibly turning and accelerating at the same time, or braking and turning and accelerating at the same time, all sorts of different combinations. So I guess you guys will have to just check back in with us.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Be safe out there.